السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وعلى أصحابه. أما بعد, Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi, he has that statement that's known, العلم قبل القول والعمل. It's a very knowledge-based statement that knowledge precedes speaking and acting, especially on issues of the deen. We find that knowledge is a requisite, but what does that mean in today's time? Most of people today are not really interested. We live in a time period in which there's not a lot of interest in seeking knowledge. And it's part of the culture, it's part of the orientation that we have in the societies that we live in today's time. There's a massive change which has taken place. If you listen to some of the educational theorists, some of the people that talk about education in a general sense, they've even have tried to figure out how to get the attention of youth and others. And part of it is because we have become so overly stimulated by electronic devices. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Espero que están bien allá. We've become so overwhelmingly impacted by stimulation that it's very hard for us to spiritually stay still. Sometimes even when we have time to be in quiet and alone, we're jittery and we're full of anxiety, and that's part of the angst or the feeling of this ease which a lot of us have in this time, which if there's no spiritual focus, it becomes hard to really see what's going on within ourselves. And it seems as though, we more and more have become accustomed to this thing, this way of life. But there's no doubt, and I don't want to go too long on this issue, there's no doubt that Islam requires a certain level of discipline of the self and knowledge. It does. The Muslim community will not recognize what Islam is in 20 and 30 years if we continue with this whole idea of pop knowledge, or we continue with this idea of just being undisciplined, in the sense that we're allowing our attention to be scattered so much that we won't focus on really understanding and learning the deen. One of the things about Islam is that it is a deen, a way of life, which is predicated on study. It is a deen which is predicated on a constant relationship with the Quran. It's a deen that has preserved the statements of his Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. It's a deen in which ideas about Islam, whether they cause doubt or don't cause doubt, are entertained. And so Islam is not just something that you just accept and that's it, and you live your life without any thought about how to practice, that you just base yourself off of whatever you saw people doing, whatever you learned as a child, or whatever you taught yourself. Islam requires effort and investment. And unfortunately, in today's time, we don't really understand the value of what that means. And we have allowed ourselves to be sold the idea that to be a doctor or engineer or a lawyer or this or that the discipline of the self in that regard is worth it. Or even in learning a field in which you have to have hands-on training. We have convinced ourselves that it's okay in these areas, or in this reality of making money for yourself, it's okay to invest time to be disciplined. It's okay in that point that you have to have focus. But when it comes to the deen, we lose focus. Neto, lo que estaba diciendo es que en la religión del Islam se manda una disciplina de estudiar, y que hoy en día la gente tiene una inquietud, y esa inquietud viene de la cultura del internet y de siempre estar con los teléfonos y la televisión y esas cosas así, que la gente siempre se tienen que tienen que entretenerse. Pues la religión manda que una cierta disciplina de la persona para que estudie la religión, para tratar de saber lo que es buen camino. Y sin estudiar, sin acostumbrarse a estudiar, la gente no puede echar para adelante. El Corán es un libro sagrado que se tiene que leer, se tiene que estudiar. Y eso manda una cierta disciplina. Y la sunna del profeta, alayhi salatu wasalam, o las enseñanzas del profeta también se tienen que estudiar. Esas cosas son las enseñanzas del Islam guardadas, ¿verdad? No tienen cambio. Y porque no tienen cambio es como encontrarnos con Dios Todopoderoso que nos está hablando hoy en día. Y sin los estudios no podemos echar para adelante. Y lo que pasa hoy en día es que la gente no quiere darle el tiempo necesario para cultivar el buen entendimiento de la religión. Pero si estamos hablando de ser doctor o ingeniero o para tener una profesión o para aprender la mecánica o esas cosas así, la gente no dan complaint, la gente no te dan rechazo para estudiar estas cosas para sobrevivir. Pero lo más importante es la vida de la alma, de lo espiritual. Y si no estamos aprendiendo cómo echar para adelante en ese nivel de vivir o en esa etapa de la vida, ¿cómo vamos a seguir siendo musulmán sin tener el conocimiento que es el conocimiento que tenemos que tener para vivir la vida bien? Lo vamos a encontrar que estamos perdidos, y en 20 años, 15 años, vamos a ver que la gente no van a entender el Islam. El Islam sí manda el conocimiento antes de actuar o de hablar en las cosas de la religión. Los 40 hadices de el Imam al-Nawawi es un libro que es bueno, y también Rios Salihin es un libro que es bueno, que también de ese Imam al-Nawawi. Esos libros no se tiene que investigar mucho sobre los hadices que están en esos libros. Uno se puede enfocar en el sentimiento de lo que está diciendo el profeta para tratar de traducir eso en acción. Y esos dos libros, para empezar, son libros que son fundamentales y son buenos, y también nos da una manera de pensar del Islam que es completo, o que está en balance. Nos da un balance de cómo entender y vivir el Islam. Y con eso lo vemos. So with that we end, inshallah, that we definitely have to learn how to discipline ourselves. And it is a struggle. It's a spiritual struggle. We have to realize that the whole issue, the whole concern with seeking knowledge, with trying to understand, that anxiety that many of us feel, that lack of focus, that lack of being able to control the attention, that's ourselves speaking to ourselves. And so we have to realize that things that may seem boring may necessarily not be bad for us, right? And so things that may be entertaining and catch our attention, just because we feel good from it doesn't necessarily mean that it's good. And so the reality of the situation is that we need that spiritual discipline. We need that learning how to come to a point of peace and ease and tranquility, to focus on our education, on our education, how to become better Muslims. Right? If what good is it that we have a Quran that's preserved and we don't read it? What good is it in our lives? In other words, what good is it that we have statements of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a biography of a prophet who we say is our prophet, that's preserved? We know his life from beginning to end, but we don't become familiar with it. So just as you need to eat, or you need to put gas in your car in order to keep moving forward, just as you need to pay your bills in order to keep your utilities on, and so on and so forth, or to pay your house note or your mortgage, and you have to invest in these things. The same thing with Islam itself. It needs some dedication, some commitment, some giving in order for us to be able to maintain the deen. And part of the principle that's here is that in order for us to act out on the deen, imagine if a lot of us are struggling with our commitment to Islam, we're struggling with our practice, You know, if there's no knowledge there, how are we going to really learn what's the right thing to do, what's not the what's the wrong thing to do, right? What's the right thing to do and what's the wrong thing to do? How will we learn that? Or how will we learn how to approach Allah, or how to face life struggles as a Muslim, or what it is that we should orient ourselves to without investing ourselves in knowledge? That's a problem that many people have, is that they don't want to invest properly. And we have to realize that as an ummah, this ummah has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so there are a lot of different opinions that are legit opinions. And sometimes we make the practice of Islam like this. When the practice of Islam is wide, it is beautiful, and it is there to nurture us, and we don't get to see the beauty of Islam or how it is that Islam helps us to grow, because we are limited in our understanding. We're very limited in our understanding, and this is one of the reasons why there's so much tension between the Muslims. Right? When we have some understanding of what the scholars have researched and written, when we have some understanding of the Quran and the Sunnah in its proper context, meaning with good etiquette and with spiritual development, and with an understanding that, you know, our practice of the deen is not just my relationship with myself and Allah, but it includes myself and other human beings. In other words, I just can't be a total hard person towards other people. You know, I have to be someone that's compassionate. I have to be someone that's loving, someone that's kind, someone that is open to others. I have to learn how to embody those qualities, because those are qualities that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had. So the thing is that, you know, if we don't have knowledge with those types of qualities in our personality, that we're developing them, then we won't really have an understanding of how to practice Islam. And many people have learned Islam in that way. They've learned Islam that is just about what is in my head and about what I think I should do. And if you're not practicing the way that I want to practice, or the way that I think, it's a conflict. And that's not what the deen of Islam is for in that regard. But literacy is a must. Literacy is a must. And we have to stop disinvesting in Islam. We invest 15, 20 years in our professions, in our businesses, in our careers, and making money and this and that, which that's fine. But then when it comes to your own religion, when it comes to your own way of life, we give it a little bit of time. And that's not correct. So we have to discipline ourselves in that regard. And we end with that. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.